listening to the Touch 'em Up podcast. And on today's episode, we have UFC Vegas 71 Pavlovich versus Blaydes preview, predictions, and analysis. In the main event of the evening, it's a heavyweight bout between one of the scariest strikers in the division now that Ngannou has walked away from the UFC, in the hard-hitting Russian number 3 ranked Sergey Pavlovich, taking on the standout wrestler developing pretty sharp striking at this point, and a former and still top contender in the heavyweight division in the number 4 ranked Chicago-based Curtis Razor Blaydes. And then in the co-main event of the evening, it was originally set to be Song Yadong versus Ricky Simone. That has been moved to next weekend's main event. Now we're going to get Brad Tavares versus Bruno Blindado Silva in the middleweight division for the co-main event of the evening. So without any further ado, let's get this started and step into the ring. All right, but let's get into what we came here to do with the UFC Fight Night 222, UFC Vegas 71, Blaydes versus Pavlovich, preview, predictions, and breakdown. And we're going to kick it off on the main card. We're not breaking down any prelims. If I was going to break down a prelim, I would probably go with the Brady high stand and Dana Botregal or Botgarel Dana or Dana Botregal. Oh my God, I can't talk. Dana Botgarel. High stand versus Botregal. I think that this fight would be cool to break down, but I didn't study much tape on it. I looked at a little bit of Botgarel's fights, looking into the Chris Gutierrez and Munoz fight, but I didn't go heavy into it enough to break it down. I think that Botgarel has much better striking. He loves to use lateral movement, stay on the outside, land the check hooks, land the straight punches down the middle. Very good counter striker, very good in and out and lateral movement. He's very light on the feet, kind of has a traditional martial arts style with the way that he moves. Brady high stand is more of a grappler. He's going to look to get in on the hips, take down Botgarel, get in the top position, land some big ground and pound, look to set up a sub. But if he stays on the feet for too long, if high stand stays and strikes with Botgarel, I think he's going to get knocked out. I think the boxing is much cleaner. The range management, the distance control, the lateral movement, the check hook counters, they're much better than the striking of Brady high stand. So if he stands with Botgarel and gets in the pocket and even plays just outside of range when it comes to the boxing range, Botgarel's going to eat him up on the feet. He's going to be able to outstrike him. His striking is a lot cleaner, crisper. The distance control, the range management, the lateral movement, the ability to check hook like we already talked about. All those things, anything on the feet is in the favor of Dana Botgarel or Botgarel. Man, I really can't say his name right. I've said it wrong about 5-6 times already. But either way, a quick breakdown. I think that the wrestling will work early for high stand, but I think Botgarel is going to be able to work his way back up to the feet, use the whizzer kick, use the overhook, stand back up, be able to shrimp his hips out and get back up, use the cage wall to scramble back up to his feet, circle off and get back to the center. And I think he's going to eventually just land some big combinations, land that big 1-2, land the check hook to the right hand, big uppercuts, big double jab right hands, and just eventually put out Brady high stand. He's going to catch him on the feet. He's going to hurt him and he's going to drop him. But again, I wouldn't recommend betting on the fight because I didn't do any tape study for this fight. I'm just going off memory. I know how each of these guys fight. It's basically striker versus grappler. It's either the grappler is going to be able to get in on the hips, take down the striker, wear him out, TKO him, submit him, or get a decision, or Botgarel is going to be able to stand on the feet, can keep it at the range he wants to, land his good punching combinations, very crisp boxing combos, use the check hook on the exits and everything like that, and be able to knock out Brady high stand, who doesn't have good striking defense, who takes a lot of punches the longer the fight goes. I would say first round is more than likely going to go to high stand because he will push that wrestling pace, probably get Garel down, get on the top position, land some ground and pound, look to set up subs. If Botgarel survives that first round and is able to work his way back up to the feet and has enough cardio and gas to play on the outside and land some big punches, then I think that Botgarel is going to piece up high stand on the feet. So I'm going to go with Botgarel, but again, I wouldn't recommend betting on it just from my perspective because I didn't do enough research and tape study to give you a good betting angle. But I will go with Botgarel to win this fight against Brady high stand via a second round TKO. I think the striking and the boxing ability, the crispness, the sharpness is just too much for high stand at this point. But we'll go in to the first fight now that we're actually going to break down, that we did film study on, and it's the welterweight opener on the main card between Jeremiah Wells and Matthew the Jedi Semmelsberger. This is a really fun fight, man. These are two guys who want to get in your face, land a big shot, and knock you the F out. These guys are going to be looking to push the pace, get in each other's face, and knock the other opponent out. The thing with Jeremiah Wells that everybody talks about is his lack of technical ability. And it's not so much a knock on his overall game, even though we'll get there the further we get into the breakdown, but it's more the fact that whenever he lands these big knockouts, it's always switch stance, lunging combos, big right hook into the big left hook as he steps into southpaw, like he landed on Court McGee to get him out of there. Big looping left hooks, right hooks, uppercuts. He keeps his chin up in the air, looping punches, overhands, hooks, wide uppercuts. That's the game of Jeremiah Wells. But he has the power, and it's landed for him multiple times. He's 11-2 in his professional MMA career. And out of those 11 victories, he's got, 5 wins by knockout and 4 by sub. So he's got 9 wins coming by way of finish out of 11 victories. And he's never been finished himself, never been KO'd, never been submitted, lost 2 decisions in his career. But yeah, this guy has big power. Jeremiah Wells has that one-hitter-quitter ability. Fighting out of West Hazelton, Pennsylvania, he's got big power in every punch that he throws. Knocked out Warley Elvis, knocked out Court McGee. I mean, everybody he fights in the UFC, if he touches your chin, he puts you out and he knocks you out. Knockout over Blood, or a submission, I believe, over Blood Diamond in the UFC. In Blood Diamond's UFC debut, if I remember, he got his foot caught in the cage as he was moving laterally and almost kind of got himself out of there. But I think Jeremiah Wells has the ability to land on the chin of Matthew Semmelsberger and knock him out. We've seen that, Matthew Semmelsberger has big power in his own right. The biggest difference in this fight is that the straight punches beat the looping punches, and Matthew Semmelsberger is a lot better. He's a lot more technical in the way he approaches the game. I would say the volume is probably more on the side of Jeremiah Wells, but that's not necessarily a good thing, I should say, because he's so reliant on his power that he'll just wing 3, 4, 5, 6 punches in your face and try to catch you on the chin and put you out. And usually he's able to land at some point and put you away. But he does have good wrestling. He does have good top control, good ability to scramble, reverse position on the floor, get takedowns, work to take the back like we saw in the Warley Elvis fight. He does have wrestling both offensively and defensively, but we don't see it much because of the power he has in his hands. One-hitter-quitter knockout power, just God-given knockout ability. If it's a left hook, a right hook, a overhand left, a overhand right, an uppercut, a lot of stance switching, lunging combinations, a lot of darting combos, kind of like a poor man's version of a Dominic Cruz lunging in, switching stances mid-combo, equal power from both stances, and he can land on the chin of anybody, including Matthew Semmelsberger, and knock him out. When you look at the record of Matthew Semmelsberger, he comes back with a record of 11 victories and 4 defeats. Out of his 11 victories, he's got 6 KO TKOs, 1 submission, and 4 decisions. 7 out of 11 wins come by way of finish, compared to 9 out of 11 wins coming by way of finish for Jeremiah Wells. Out of his 4 losses, he's been finished twice and gone to decision twice, knocked out once, submitted once, and then lost 2 decisions. He lost a unanimous decision to Alex Morono back at UFC 277. That was a fight I actually picked Matthew Semmelsberger, and I was pretty confident in that fight. He dropped Morono early in the fight, but then just got behind on the volume, got behind on the technical striking, got behind on the numbers, and Morono was able to beat him up. Jake Matthews' fight, he was losing that fight on volume all day, but every time he landed that right hand, whether it was a 1-2, whether it was a feint jab to a right hand down the middle, an overhand right, a right hand into a switch stance, same side right hook as Jake Matthews circled laterally off the cage. Every time he touched Matthews' chin with the right hand, he hurt him. That's another thing. Both these guys have God-given knockout ability. Matthew Semmelsberger in that right hand, it's money. Jeremiah Wells, both hands, overhand rights, left hooks. He's got power in both of his hands. If either one, whoever lands first in this fight is the person who's going to win. I would say more one-punch knockout ability. If it ends the fight with one punch, I think it comes from Jeremiah Wells, just wild hooks and uppercuts. But Matthew Semmelsberger's a lot sharper. He's a lot cleaner. His punches have a lot less wind-up. And we've said this so many times that straight punches beat looping punches. However, the defense of Semmelsberger isn't the best, but he just finds ways to land in your defense and, lands on the chin and puts you out. His first fight in the UFC, he won in 15 seconds of the first round. Or not his first fight in the UFC. In the fight against, which one? In the fight against Martin Sano back in September of 2021, he won the fight 15 seconds into round 1 with a shot. Just right hand, boom, right on the chin, dropped him, put him out. Won a unanimous decision over AJ Fletcher, who also competes on this card. Lost to Alex Morono via unanimous decision, and then defeated Jake Matthews via decision because even though he was getting outstruck on the volume, he found ways to land the right hand, found ways to land the right hook off the stance switch. Semi the Jedi is going to have less volume in this fight, but he's going to be the much more technical fighter. He's going to have better lateral movement. He's going to have better defensive responsibility. And I don't even think that Matthew Semelsberger is the best defensive fighter, but I think he's a better defensive fighter than Jeremiah Wells. I think he has better wrestling ability, better scrambling ability, and I think he is able to work his way back up. Even if he does get taken down, he can switch position, get into the top position. I think the overall more well-rounded fighter in this fight is Matthew Semelsberger, but you have to always take into consideration the great equalizer that Jeremiah Wells might not be the best technically, but he's got that one-hitter quitter power. I mean, look, the guy's built like a brick shithouse. But when it comes to a pick, I feel like this is a fight you don't bet on unless you bet fight doesn't go to decision, because I think there's a finish either way. It's either a big wild punch from Jeremiah Wells or it's the sharpshooter right hand of Matthew Semelsberger that lands on the chin of Jeremiah Wells and puts him out. Based on the fact that Jeremiah Wells has never been finished, isn't that what we said? 9-2 or 11-2, never been finished before in his career? Yeah, never been finished. I think we've seen that Jeremiah Wells is durable, but I don't think he's faced anybody with the power of Matthew Semelsberger. I think Matthew Semelsberger has fought better competition than Jeremiah Wells, but I also think in the same regard, Matthew Semelsberger hasn't fought anybody with the power of Jeremiah Wells. So you have to take that into consideration, and this could be considered a 50-50 fight. And in 50-50 fights, you want to take the guy who has better technique, better defensive responsibility, better ability to set up his shots, and is the less telegraphed striker with the overall more well-rounded game. So I'm going to go with Semi the Jedi. I'm going to go with Matthew Semelsberger to win this fight via a second round knockout. I think there is a possibility that maybe it makes it into the third, but I think we do see a finish either way. It's either going to be Wells landing early or Semelsberger landing early in the same regard, or, you know, if they both get tired, maybe we get a decision. If in the second and the third they both get tired and can't find their range, but I think we see a finish either way. So the best bet for the fight would probably be fight doesn't go to decision, but an overall pick in terms of the betting, I don't like it because I do think this is a very close fight. I think it's almost 50-50, but based on the fact that Semelsberger is more technical than Wells, I'm going to say that maybe Semelsberger gets the advantage like 58-42 in terms of overall win percentages because of his scrambling ability, because of his more well-rounded game, because of the better technique. So I'm going to go with Matthew Semi the Jedi Semelsberger to defeat Jeremiah Wells via a second round knockout victory, landing that right hand through the looping punches, countering the big wide looping punches of Wells with the straight shots down the middle. So my pick is Matthew Semi the Jedi Semelsberger to defeat Jeremiah Wells via second round knockout with that right hand right down the middle. All right, the next fight up is going to be a lightweight battle in a banger between Bobby King Green and Jared Flash Gordon. I'm really excited for this fight, man. I think this fight is very close, and I do not think that Bobby Green should be like a, what is he, a -250, -260 favorite, maybe higher than that. I don't think Bobby Green should be that big of a favorite, considering even though he was running away with the win against Drew Dober before he got knocked out, first time he ever got finished in his career, I believe, first time he ever got knocked out, he was running away with it. He was making Dober look silly. He was catching him, just out-voluming him. It looked very similar to the Nasrat Haqparast fight against Bobby Green, but he got caught up against the cage in the shoulder roll and got hit. Jared Flash Gordon arguably beat Paddy Pimblett in his last fight, Paddy the Baddy. I'm so glad that he didn't, because I had Paddy Pimblett in a lot of parlays that night, and he cashed me like 12 units overall after that fight. So I'm glad that a crappy decision or a somewhat close decision went my way for once. But I think Jared Gordon's boxing is going to give Bobby Green some issues, man. He's not the most flashy, and even though that's his nickname, he doesn't like to throw big, wild looping punches. He doesn't use a lot of fancy footwork. There's not a lot of angle changes. There's not a lot of triangle steps. There's not a lot of lateral movement. He's kind of a walk forward, high guard, look to land the punches, look to counter your defensive inefficiencies and catch you on the chin. He was catching Paddy Pimblett with that left hook all mofo day. He was catching him every time with the chin up in the air. Bang, left hook. Jab, right hook to the body, left hook. Right hook to the body, left hook up top to the head. Jab, left hook. 1-2, left hook. Cross, left hook. Every time he was stepping into range, Paddy Pimblett was getting cracked on the chin. And Jared Gordon has power. That man can crack. I mean, he landed on if he lands on Bobby Green, based on the fact that Green got knocked out the last time, we don't know what Green's going to look like coming off a knockout loss, in the first knockout loss in the UFC, first knockout loss of his career. We don't know what Bobby Green's going to look like, and to tell you the truth. I think that you look at Bobby Green, what's his overall record? That was his first knockout loss in the UFC, not first knockout loss in his career. I said career, my bad. I mixed it up. But that was the first time he got knocked out in the UFC, I believe. Maybe I can check that out. I guess you could consider the TKO over Makhachev, but was that really a knockout? This was the first time Green really got flatlined in the UFC. It says he got knocked out. Well, he got knocked out by Poirier, but that wasn't even one punch. It was kind of a barrage of punches. I mean, nobody really knocks out Bobby Green. The last time he really got knocked out was Poirier. Lost the decision to Barbosa. Split decision to Rashid Magomedov. Draw against Lando Venata. But the cleanest KO that Bobby Green's ever gotten caught with was against Drew Dober in his last fight. So I'm sure he's going to come back. I'm sure it's not going to really affect him. But Bobby Green's been around for a long time. I mean, he's got 43 fights in his pro MMA career. 29 wins, 14 losses. And I know you look at that record and you think, oh, 14 losses. Like, he's almost got a 50-50 record. And I could see where you're coming from. But Bobby Green has some of the best boxing, the best traditional boxing transitioned over into MMA and using a boxing heavy style mixed in with MMA that we've ever seen. He's got the best application of the shoulder roll defense from boxing that we've really ever seen in MMA. The closest second would be Dustin Poirier, but I think Bobby Green does it better. Loves to shoulder roll, switches his stances. He throws punches so straight and they're down from his hips, so you can't really see what angle the punches are coming at, which makes it harder for the opponent to defend. But he will throw like 1-2 in a square stance, or 1-2 in an orthodox stance, and then he'll square up his hips and he'll hit you with a jab. Well, originally it was the weak side. Now it's the power side because his hips are square for equal power. Or he'll 1-2, bang, step back into the opposite stance, boom, land a jab right on your face, or a straight right to your face. That's exactly how he knocked out Ali Quinta. It was a bop, step back, square up his stance, boom, cracked him right in the chin, dropped him, and got him out of there. Bobby Green has awkward movement, very good head movement, very good defensive ability. I mean, like I said, he was running away with the fight against Drew Dober until he got caught with that overhand left. But overall, he's the much better, volume fighter. He's going to have more volume. He's going to be landing more punches. It's probably going to look better to the judges in terms of his movement, his trash talking, his showboating, cross, left body kick behind it, 1-2, right low kick, 1-2, right body kick, switch back to southpaw, come back, straight left, boom, boom, 1-2, right hook, straight left, 1-2, switch back, square up his stance, straight right hand, double jab, switch back southpaw, right, left, straight, double jab with the right hand, switch back to orthodox, 1-3-2, 1-1-2, pull counters. I mean, Bobby Green has some of the best boxing in terms of offensive and defensive responsibility that we've seen in MMA, and the best practical application of the shoulder roll defense in mixed martial arts. He's going to be outlanding Jared Gordon on volume. He's going to have better footwork. He's going to have trickier angles. But going up against the southpaw, primarily in Bobby Green, against the orthodox fighter in Jared Gordon is going to be able to find the weapons, land that left hook. His left hook is sharp. The right hook to the body, left hook up top is sharp. The jab left hook is sharp. Feint right hand left hook is sharp. Uppercuts to left hook. The best punch Jared Gordon has is a left hook. And against the southpaw, your main weapon isn't going to be the jab. It's going to be the jab to get the outside foot on the southpaw fighter in Green to land the left hook. But based on the fact that Bobby Green will switch his stances mid-combination and he'll square up his hips, it might be harder for Jared Gordon to download the data and find the way to get the outside foot against Bobby Green, because he's so active, because he moves around so much, because he switches his stances, because he squares up his hips. It might be harder for the opponent to get that outside foot and land on Bobby Green. It was so hard for Dober to finally push Green back to the fence, and all he was trying to do the whole time was get that outside foot. Check right hook, overhand left. Check right hook, straight left. Jab, right hook, straight left. The entire time he was trying to get the outside foot whenever Green would switch to South Orthodox. He was constantly trying to step to the outside or step to the rear side to get the angle for the shot, and it was so hard to get it unless he kept him up against the cage. Drew Dober has a lot more power than Jared Gordon, but taking into consideration that Bobby Green got knocked out cold in his last fight, yeah, he woke up right away. Yeah, he got back up and was like, oh, you got me. But, it's still a concern if you're looking at it from a betting perspective and if you're looking at it from a pick perspective. Bobby Green's the better fighter. Bobby Green has more weapons. I think Bobby Green has better defensive wrestling. Even though Jared Gordon is good with the scrambles, he pushes you up against the cage, controls in the over-under position. Bobby Green has good takedown defense. He has offensive wrestling as well. Good trips inside the clinch, good reversals if he gets taken down. I think Bobby Green is the better fighter, but going off the performance of Jared Gordon against Paddy Pimblett, you have to take into consideration that maybe Gordon can keep landing that left hook against the southpaw and Green. Maybe he can continue to get the outside foot and land the big shot. Maybe he can continue to land the left hook. Maybe he can continue to get the angles he needs to get. Maybe he can push Bobby Green up against the cage, wear him out, and win a decision. Bobby Green is in close fights all the time. He never really runs away with fights. The only time we've really seen him run away with a decision clearly was in the fight with Drew Dober until he got knocked out, and in the fight against Nasrat Haqparast, which arguably was the best fight of his career, and that was against another southpaw. Now we got a southpaw in Drew Dober, considering the fact that Drew Dober was constantly looking to get that outside foot, constantly looking to land big shots. Now going up against an orthodox fighter in Gordon, who's going to be looking to set up the left hook, I think we'll see Bobby Green switch his stances all the time, square up his hips for power, but he has to be careful with squaring up his hips so Gordon can't level change, push him to the fence, and look to control and get time on the clock. I do not think that there's any realm where Bobby Green should be a minus 250 favorite. I do favor him in this fight. I do think he's the overall better fighter. I do think he has more weapons, and I do think the things that he does looks better to the judges, but the shoulder roll defense doesn't get used so much. So sometimes when punches are missing him, if he's slipping, catching, rolling, pulling, catch on the shoulder, catch high, boom, boom, slip, catch, roll, counter. Sometimes the punches look like they're landing, but it just misses Bobby Green. And to the judges, that might be a problem. But Jared Gordon is not a heavy volume fighter, and the volume is more going to be coming from the side of Bobby Green. But the cleaner, overall mechanically correct shots would probably come from Jared Gordon, mainly in the form of the lead left hook or the three. But the odds, like we were talking about, I'm going to pull them up because it's kind of crazy. We have Green at minus 275, Gordon plus 235. There's no way Bobby Green should be a minus 275 coming off a knockout loss. I think the most you line this is minus 190 Bobby Green, plus 165, plus 170 Jared Gordon. I don't think Bobby Green should be almost a 3-1 favorite. The highest maybe 200, but I don't even like that. I think minus 190, considering it's a minus 275, this is a fight you want to stay away from. If you want to bet it and you're on the side of Bobby Green, then you take Bobby Green by decision. I think this fight does go the distance, but I also think Gordon has a style where if Bobby Green can really put that volume on him, and if he's so much faster, he might clip Jared Gordon and get him out of there. So, take with that what you will, but I'm going to go with Bobby Green. Like I said, I think he's the better fighter. I think he's much faster. I think he has more weapons. I think his footwork, his defense, his movement is so much better. But Gordon is sharp. He is sharp with his boxing. He does have good offensive wrestling, good scrambling ability, good ability to push the opponent up against the cage, which could be a big weapon against Bobby Green, who likes to back up to the cage, and that's actually what got him knocked out against Drew Dober. But I am going to go with Bobby Green to defeat Jared Flash Gordon. I'm going to go with him to win via decision. I'm going to go 29-28 unanimous decision victory for Bobby King Green. But betting perspective, I would just stay away from it, man. I like Bobby Green. I like Green by decision if you can get it at plus money. Maybe if you're feeling like maybe the chin of Bobby Green won't hold up, or that Gordon's going to get clipped with a big shot from Green because he's going to be so much faster, maybe you take the under 2.5, which I think is at like plus 240, plus 200, somewhere around there. Maybe you think you take the under. I thought it was for sure going over with Dober and Green, and it went under 2.5. I played the over 2.5 in like every bet I had, and it killed me after Green got knocked out. So maybe the best play is under. Maybe this fight is where Green lands too much on the chin of Jared Gordon and his speed is too much, or Gordon catches Green with a left hook and over the shoulder, drops him and knocks him out. Maybe you want to take the unders. I'm going to go Bobby Green by decision, but I think this is a very tricky fight to bet on, and I don't like Green at minus 275. Like I said, the highest he should be is minus 190, but give me Bobby Green to defeat Jared Gordon via 29-28 unanimous decision. All right, and now we're at the co-main event of the evening now, since the Song Yadong and Ricky Simon fight is being moved back. It's in the middleweight division between Brad Tavares and Bruno Blindado Silva. Brad Tavares is coming off that decision loss to Dricus du Plessis. He clearly won the first round, dropped du Plessis a few times, was the better striker, great counters, the overhand right, the left hook. He was catching du Plessis lunging in the whole night. But the longer the fight went, the lunging combinations, the stance change combinations, the awkward angles that the straight punches were coming at from du Plessis was hurting him. He got caught with a spinning back fist, was getting caught with some big punches, and du Plessis was able to keep up that pace, keep up that pressure, and clearly get the last two rounds. And, Brad Tavares just couldn't keep up. The reach, the length, the distance was too much in terms of the long straight punches of du Plessis. When it comes to Blindado Silva, Bruno Silva, his last fight was against Gerald Mearshart. That was a fight where I was very confident Bruno Silva was going to knock GM3 out early, was going to put him away, was going to make a statement, considering Bruno Silva went 3 rounds in a very competitive fight against the now former middleweight champion in Alex Poatan Pereira. Gave him his toughest fight of his career until that knockout loss to Israel Adesanya at UFC 287, and then obviously the fight where he won the title at UFC 281 at MSG. The other hardest fight of his career in terms of the UFC was Bruno Blindado Silva. Went back and forth. He lost the fight via unanimous decision, did Blindado Silva against Poatan, but he had great combinations, good check hooks, good hooks to low kicks, inside and outside low kicks, switching up his stances, getting good takedowns, good timing on the takedowns, controlling him up against the cage, landing some good counters against the defensively irresponsible Poatan when he just relied on his power, which is what got him caught against Adesanya. But Bruno Silva's good, but the GM3 fight, man, I don't know if it was the fact he just wasn't there mentally. I don't know if it was the fact he had an off night, but he did not look good in that fight. And GM3 looked really good. I mean, he couldn't land his punches, did Blindado Silva. GM3 was moving out of the way. He was pulling, he was slipping, he was rolling underneath. He was really using good lateral movement, pulling away, countering, landed a big overhand left on Blindado Silva, dropped him, jumped on him, basically knocked him out, but grabbed a front choke and then tapped out Silva in the 3rd round, but was outstriking him, landing that left kick to the body all night, which is a signature of GM3. Landed that left kick to the body all night long, man. And Bruno Silva just fell apart. And that's why you have to take into consideration against a veteran in Brad Tavares, who's fought the who's who in the division. Former champions like Robert Whittaker, the current champion in Israel Adesanya, went 5 rounds with him, even though it wasn't necessarily competitive. Tavares is a gamer. Tavares has been in there with the best of the best. Blindado Silva has more overall fights, but the UFC experience is on the side of Brad Tavares all day. 19-8 for Tavares, 27 professional MMA fights, 22-8 for Silva, 30 MMA fights. So, more experience overall on the side of Silva, but the UFC experience is heavy on the side of Tavares. Bruno Silva's wild. He has big power in close range, far range, good uppercuts from inside the clinch, good ground and pound like he showcased in the win against Wellington Turman, where he just banged away on him from inside the guard, knocking him out cold, landed a big shot up against Jordan Wright, but the Jordan Wright fight, you obviously can't take too much stock in that. And even early in that fight, man, Jordan Wright was pushing back Silva. He was landing some good punches. He was really pushing him back and landing early, but once Bruno Silva landed on the chin, that was it for Jordan Wright. So I think the more technical fighter in this fight overall is going to be Brad Tavares. Good inside and outside low kicks. His technique in terms of kickboxing is so much better than Bruno Silva. He's the better technical fighter, the better counters, Brad Tavares. The sharper striking, Brad Tavares. The better grappling, I would say, is Bruno Silva in terms of jiu-jitsu, but I think the better takedown defense, the better defensive wrestling, and the ability to keep it on the feet is going to come from Brad Tavares. I see a lot of people riding heavy on Bruno Silva, considering Tavares lost to Dricus du Plessis, got knocked out by Edmund Shabazian on the come-up, and Shabazian just really couldn't put it together, even though he got a win in his last fight against Dolce Lungiambula. You know, Edmund Shabazian just really couldn't put it together after that win over Tavares when he tried to make his way to the top. Lost to Derek Brunson, and then that was kind of it for him. Bruno Silva's good. He went back and forth with Poatan. He went back and forth with Pereira in a close fight, and I think a lot of people are taking that fight into their stock when they're breaking down who they think is going to win or who they think is the better overall fighter from a betting perspective, because a lot of the fights nowadays, you're looking at it from a betting perspective, because you got DraftKings, you got FanDuel, you got Caesars, William Hill, you got everything. You know, you can bet on everything pretty much in terms of MMA. So everybody kind of looks at this fight in terms of the betting perspective. If we look at the overall betting lines for this fight, I should be able to pull it up real quick. Let's see. Is it gonna? Yeah, so you got Bruno Silva at a plus 130 underdog. Brad Tavares is at a minus 150 favorite. I think Tavares should be the favorite. I know he's kind of fallen off a little bit lately, but he's still good. He's still sharp. He's still technical. Still has great takedown defense, great boxing, good body kicks, good kicking game overall, good pairing up of his boxing combinations. I mean, he has great ability to land big shots against his opponents and great counter ability. And against the wild switch stance fighter, the wild, darting forward fighter in Silva, I know Silva's going to have more power than Brad Tavares, but I think the counter ability of Tavares is going to give Silva some trouble. But I also think in close range, at far range, Silva always has the opportunity to land that natural power and hurt Brad Tavares. But Tavares is a guy who's only really been finished by Robert Whittaker and Edmund Shabazian recently. And the Edmund one doesn't look great because he did kind of get outclassed in that fight. It was so early, dropping him with the 1-2 and then landing the lead high kick and putting Tavares out. But, the win again, the loss to Robert Whittaker with the teep kick and then jumping forward into that hopping left hook on the chin. Robert Whittaker is a former middleweight champion. He went back and forth with Adesanya. I think he'd give Pereira a run for his money even. I'm not saying that I would think Brad Tavares would win, but I think he gives Pereira a run for his money. And Bruno Silva gave Pereira a run for his money in a very close fight against a former middleweight champion. Brad Tavares not so close, but went 5 rounds with Adesanya. So this is a close fight, man. This is a fight that I think either side in terms of betting, you stay away. Because for the most part, if Brad Tavares wins this fight, it's more than likely going to be a decision. He's going to outclass him, out kickbox him, have better angles, have better range, have better defense, and overall outstrike Bruno Silva and win a decision, because Silva's going to get tired in the 3rd round. He's going to get tired in the 2nd round because he relies so much on the wild actions, the big looping punches, hooks, uppercuts, overhands. Big power is what Bruno Silva relies on, but it's brought him to the dance and he's put a lot of people away with it. So you have to take that into consideration. The more technical striker, though, is Brad Tavares. The bigger power, Bruno Silva. If you think the fight doesn't go the distance, you're going to probably be on the side of Bruno Silva to get the win by a TKO. But Brad Tavares isn't a guy who's easy to finish. If you're on the side of Tavares, you're more than likely going to think he strikes his way or techniques his way to a 3-round unanimous decision. I'm going to side with Tavares just because that last fight with GM3 against Bruno Silva really left a bad taste in my mouth. I don't think I can back you. I know that GM3 was on a win streak. I know he's always finding ways to get the win from the jaws of defeat, but he just looked really bad in that fight. Like, overall, he looked terrible. And I know he's got big power. I know he's got decent technical ability, but Brad Tavares is much more technical. He's got much sharper counters. I think the more power in the counters comes from Silva, but I think the better, sharper, more technical counter fighter, the better footwork, the better angles, the better head movement does come from the side of Tavares, even though we saw him have trouble with the lunging power switch stance combinations with straights and hooks in the fight against du Plessis, because if he circles, usually defensively, he'll only circle that one way, and then he can get caught if the opponent switches stances. He doesn't really circle one way, then go back the other and kind of feint the circle to go back the other way. Once he starts circling, he goes that direction. And if you're lunging forward with stance changes, you're going to catch him on that stance change because he's now circling into the power when before he was circling away from it, going to the weak side. So I do think Silva does have the chance to knock Tavares out. I do think he has the power to put it on the chin and put him down. But I'm going to go with Tavares to get the win, even though he's been in the UFC for a while, hasn't had the best success lately. I do think he's able to get the win here. I think he's the much better overall fighter. He has great takedown defense. And as long as Bruno Silva doesn't catch him on the chin early, which is a big ask, I do think Tavares will make his way to a pretty convincing unanimous decision. So give me Brad Tavares, the veteran, to beat Bruno Blindado Silva via 29-28 unanimous decision. Betting perspective, I would just stay off of it altogether. I don't like it from any side. All right, and now we get to the main event of the evening. We've already talked about it. Heavyweight division, number 3 ranked Pavlovich versus number 4 ranked Curtis Razor Blaydes. Sergey Pavlovich versus Razor Blaydes. Here's the deal. Curtis Blaydes stands with Sergey Pavlovich for too long. He's going to get knocked the fuck out. Straight up. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. Pavlovich probably doesn't look the best technically in terms of like mechanically correct punches. But the thing that people don't understand is even when he blitzes, even when he goes for a barrage of punches once he lands on your chin, his hooks and uppercuts are very technical in the way he throws them. He throws them, quote unquote, Russian style. A regular hook, American style hook, is going to be palm facing your chest or facing your face, thumb up. You're going to turn the hip, elbow 90-degree angle. When you throw a Russian style hook, this is how Pavlovich throws it. It's palm down, your thumb facing your chest, not facing up, palm down, thumb to your chest, boom. And doing a palm down Russian style hook is going to land with the first 2 knuckles more than having the option to land with your pinky and index, or pinky and ring finger. It's going to hit with the first 2 knuckles, which are the strongest part of your hand, and it's going to give you more range. You can get pretty good range with a hook, like a regular American style hook. You can go, to a few different ranges. But when you put that palm down and extend it, you're going to get better range, and it's going to allow you to get some better angles, and it can protect your hand. But instead of breaking your last 2 fingers, you can break your thumb. Shout out to Mikey B for that story he told me earlier. My boy, DJ Mikey B, you know who you are. But keeping the palm down, the Russian style hooks, he has unbelievable God-given power. I'm so upset that we don't have Francis Ngannou in the heavyweight division anymore, because Pavlovich versus Ngannou, those are the 2 heaviest hitters in the UFC's heavyweight division. The 2 heaviest fighters 2 heaviest hitters in the heavyweight division. And, it's just like, I can't believe that we're not going to get to see that fight. But maybe Francis will come back to the UFC at some point. But going into this, Curtis Blaydes is getting better with his striking. He has good punches, good ability to find the angles, find some good straight shots. Caught Chris Daukaus with a good straight right hand, good short right hand as he was stepping in. Boom. His striking has gotten better. He likes to feint that rear cross, circle, step off to his left, step back, feint, get you to look up. But he does the same fakes and feints over and over again. And that's not a knock on Blaydes, even though in a way it is, because good strikers in that division with heavy power are going to be able to see that you continue to do the same feint. They're not going to bite on it, and when they do, you're not going to be ready for it, and he's going to catch you on the chin and put you out. So I think Pavlovich is going to knock Curtis Blaydes out in the first round. I think the longer the fight goes, it's going to definitely go to the side of the wrestling, the grappling, the takedowns, and the striking comfortability of Curtis Blaydes that has gone up. We have seen Sergey Pavlovich in his 1 loss in his UFC career, 1 loss overall in his MMA career. He got grounded and pounded by Alistair Overeem, but that was 3, 4, 5 years ago. That's not the same Pavlovich. So you have to take that into consideration. Yes, he got grounded and pounded. Yes, Overeem landed big punches. Yes, but he didn't even get a traditional takedown. He got an outside trip, and the trip led to Overeem landing on top and landing some big punches. So yes, he has been grounded and pounded. Yes, he had trouble with the wrestling. Once he was on his back, he got grounded and pounded into oblivion. Curtis Blaydes doesn't have the same power as Alistair Overeem, so you got to look at that as well. And the fact that I think Sergey Pavlovich's takedown defense has gotten much better in the last few years. I think Curtis Blaydes' striking has gotten better in the last few years as well. His striking has got a lot better. His comfortability on the feet, his combinations, his footwork, his defensive ability has gotten him much better on the feet. So Pavlovich's takedown defense has gotten him better, and Curtis Blaydes' durability and technique on the feet has gotten better since the fight that took place. Who's fought the better competition? Curtis Blaydes. Who has the bigger power? Sergey Pavlovich by a mile, baby. So here's what I think. If it goes past the second round, more than likely, Curtis Blaydes is going to win. He's going to get the wrestling. He's going to get those takedowns, push Pavlovich up against the cage, work the ground and pound, and be able to potentially submit him or TKO him on the ground. In the first 2 rounds, if there's a stoppage, I think that Blaydes can definitely find the chin of Pavlovich because he does kind of loop his punches and his defense isn't the best, but the power of Sergey Pavlovich in this fight is the great equalizer. And that's a fight that's something that in some fights you can look past it. You can't look past it here, man. I think that we've seen Blaydes get knocked out multiple times before. Yes, it was to Derek Lewis and Francis Ngannou, 2 of the heaviest hitters in the division. He's been rocked in other fights as well. And, I don't consider him like that chinny because he hasn't been knocked out in a little bit, but he's still chinny. And being chinny against who I believe to be the heaviest hitter in the division, Derek Lewis knocked out Curtis Blaydes in a fight that he was losing, but he timed him with an uppercut off the level change because Blaydes made it so obvious he was going to change levels. Sergey Pavlovich is going to be expecting the takedowns of Curtis Blaydes in this fight. So his whizzer game, the overhook, the sprawl, the ability to work his way back up to the feet. Yes, this is going to be the best grappler and wrestler that Pavlovich has faced. And if Curtis Blaydes gets him to the floor, it's going to be a problem. But the takedown defense of Sergey Pavlovich is going to be much better than the last time we've really seen him showcase it, which was in the fight against which was in the fight against Derek Lewis a little bit, but mainly in the fight against Alistair Overeem. But that wasn't even a regular traditional wrestling takedown. That was a kickboxing trip. So it's different with the way that it's set up. I think that Pavlovich is going to catch Curtis Blaydes on the chin and knock him out early, round 1. I do. I think that early Curtis Blaydes striking isn't the best, and he kind of has to get into a rhythm with his striking, but he has that wrestling on lock. So I think he's not going to stand and strike with Pavlovich, but he's going to be using the wrestling. But Pavlovich is going to be expecting the wrestling, so it's not going to work as good for Blaydes early on in the fight. And Curtis has never been a guy who's comfortable early in the striking exchanges. He gets more comfortable the longer you are able to play around with him, the more he's able to make reads, and the less his opponent's able to capitalize on the mistakes that he makes both offensively and defensively. And I think it's just going to be a case of Pavlovich finding an opening, landing a big right hand, a big left hook, a big uppercut on Curtis Blaydes, bum rushing him and putting him out. I don't think it's going to be a one-shot KO, but I do think he gets a TKO. He's going to catch Blaydes on the chin with that Russian style hook, drop him, hurt him, and then he's going to put him away. So my pick is going to be the number 3 ranked Sergey Pavlovich to defeat Curtis Razor Blaydes via a first round TKO. He's an underdog right now, plus 150. I would jump on that as quick as you can, man. I would take Pavlovich as the underdog all day against Blaydes, unless you really think that he's going to grind out Pavlovich, because we've seen him have trouble with grappling and ground and pound in the fight against Overeem, but I don't see that happening. I think he's going to stop the takedown early, hit Curtis Blaydes with a big shot, big combo, and knock him out. So give me Sergey Pavlovich as the plus 150 underdog. I think he's like plus 130 now, maybe plus 140. Let's check. He is still plus 150. So give me the plus 150 dog, Sergey Pavlovich, to defeat Curtis Razor Blaydes, the number... What was I going to say? The number 3 ranked fighter to defeat the number 4 ranked fighter and work his way up to that title shot via first round knockout. He's going to stop the takedown. He's going to hit Blaydes on the chin with a big shot, and he's going to put him out. And it's a guy we've seen be put out before. So yeah, Sergey Pavlovich all day. Betting, I like Pavlovich on the money line at plus 150. If the KO is like plus 200, then take the KO. But I like Sergey Pavlovich on the money line this weekend. And I know some people are going to be on the favorite in Blaydes because of his wrestling. I just don't see it. He's going to get hit on the chin and get knocked out by the newcomer storming the heavyweight division in Sergey Pavlovich. So Sergey Pavlovich to defeat Curtis Blaydes via first round knockout. All right, that's going to be it for my UFC Vegas 71 Blaydes versus Pavlovich preview, predictions, and breakdown. These predictions will be uploaded, obviously, on the podcast platforms that you're listening to now, like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, Breaker, Stitcher, and many more. The podcast will be broken down and uploaded into individual fight segments on the YouTube channel, which is the same name as the podcast, at the Touch 'em Up Podcast. I'm your host, Double M, and I'm out. Enjoy the fights this weekend at UFC Vegas 71.